Hello, all. Welcome back to What's On Tonight, a podcast with elaborate, quirky, and unpredictable conversations about TV, movies, and more. I'm Becky.
And I'm Andy.
We have another special treat tonight. We have with us the amazing Gavin Brivik, who is the composer for The Pitt. We are so excited to have you on, Gavin. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Yeah. Thank you both for having me, and Mandy, Becky. It's great to meet you both, and I feel honored. This is awesome.
Yeah, so we had to tell Brian when we had him on that we have very little understanding of what it is you guys do. So getting a chance to talk with y'all and learn this side of the show is just so amazing. So we are very excited to talk with you, learn your process and all the work that you do to make this show as amazing as it is. So
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty extensive group of people doing post-production, and it's always interesting. It feels like two separate worlds. There's like the world of people making it on set, filming it, and then there's like this entire group of people who are the post-production people who, and sometimes the sad part is we never get to meet each other, you know? It's like,
yeah,
but it feels like we're all a part of like one little community, you know?
that's cool. That's very cool.
That's actually one of the most fascinating things we learned when we were talking to Brian was how extensive the crew is for just the sound. And we delved a little bit into the difference between the composing. We were really shocked at how little your two roles seem to overlap, but it's also really, really interesting how many cooks it takes to make the broth.
Absolutely.
One of the first questions that we always have is, how did you decide to get into the industry that you're in? And then as a follow-up to that, how specifically did you get your role on The Pitt? Like Becky said, we know so little about sound and music. Neither one of us have any kind of a background in that. So I'm always really
I used
fascinated.
to play the piano.
Oh, there is that. Yeah.
That will come in the handy, Becky. I'm gonna start quizzing you over the keys.
Oh God, it's been a long time. I was in East Tennessee and I had lunch with my dad and I was talking about how much I miss playing the piano. It was like I didn't like to play in front of people, but I liked just getting home before everybody, before school, after school, and just playing. It was just good therapy for me, and I was talking about how much I miss it. So I may fail this test miserably, but we can try.
Maybe after this conversation, you'll be inspired to pick it up again. You know,
yeah,
it's never
I would
too
love
late.
to.
It is good. Music therapy is real. I took classes on music therapy. It's awesome, and I know music
cool.
therapists. But yeah, your question's a big one. Like, I mean, my path's slightly unconventional in the sense of I started my musical journey as like a guitarist playing in various types of indie rock groups. I was very into like metal screamo stuff, and I played in hardcore bands. And then when I was in high school, the jazz band teacher was looking for a guitarist for the jazz band. And so he started asking the school, like, who's the best guitarist in school? Like, who could play, guitar solos? And a lot of people kept giving my name. And, like, ignorantly, I just was like, I'm a rocker. I don't like jazz. Like, I don't want to play jazz. But I loved blues. That was the funniest thing is, like, I would, like, my parents would take me to see B.B. King and, like, go see all these, like, legends of blues that would pass through my hometown of Kansas City, which had, like, a long history of blues and jazz. So the teacher like emailed my mom and like begged her to convince me to join the jazz band. And I realized like, oh yeah, I get to play guitar at school, and like, of course. So I joined the jazz band and then became obsessed with jazz. And like, it was like all I thought about. So I went to school to study jazz. And unfortunately, like while I was there, I injured my wrist very severely. I got like carpal tunnel and tendonitis, so I was unable to play guitar anymore. So it was like a massively depressing part of my life where I kind of lost my identity and what I thought was my thing. But while I was in music school, to like maintain my scholarship and my my role in the conservatory I was in, my roommate was like composer. So he's like, you should just take a composition class and you can stay in the music school. Because I was already composing stuff on the guitar, and like I used I love synthesizers, and I loved I always wrote the music from the bands I was in. I just never thought about like what is a composer like in a academic sense. Like so I took the composition classes and ended up like falling in love with it, and it's a very obviously like a mental craft. It's like what you can imagine you can make real. So I didn't need to be like a virtuoso of guitar or piano. It's really a digital art form, so it really became like my thing. And then obviously my wrists slowly healed and then everything, but then I had like no more interest in really like pursuing a performance career or studying jazz anymore. Like I just wanted to compose, and I was obsessed with the composing world. And I had always been into film scores and film music, and I was a big cinephile. Like my parents raised me on so many classic movies and everything from like super old like Hitchcock stuff and to like tons of 80s, 70s movies and everything modern. And I always noticed scores, and I bought soundtrack CDs in high school. I'd like buy Jurassic Park and all that stuff. So I always thought about it. I just didn't think it was something I could do. And then after a few years of taking composition classes, I started thinking like, what are the realistic jobs for a composer? It's pretty much just teaching, or you pivot into some sort of multimedia thing, like whether that be video games or doing music for commercials or movies. So I started looking a lot more into that since I had a dual, interest and hobby in film and TV. And then I applied for a summer workshop at NYU, which allowed like students to, learn how to film score, because I really didn't know, and there was no entertainment industry in Kansas City like that. So it was either New York or LA, and NYU kind of had a connection with some of the professors at my undergrad. So I went to this NYU program and ended up like getting a few awards for my compositions at the film scoring thing. And a lot of the teachers and composers kind of came up to me and they're like, this is like your thing, like you need to do this. And it was the first time I really felt like really incentivized to compose. And then I ended up applying to NYU for graduate school, went there, and that's kind of like where I met all my closest collaborators who were fellow students. I spent a lot of time in New York City going to film festivals and connecting with filmmakers, and honestly like that's kind of where I got a lot of my beginning work. And I met this director named Daniel Goldhaber, who I did the movie Cam with. And then when our second movie, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, kind of took off a little bit and was acquired by Neon. And so that movie kind of gave me a little bit of like a known credit, and people were actually like listening to that score. And then my agents weirdly just pitched me for the Pitt. Like the Pitt was like something that where they started doing like a call for composers. And thankfully, Terry Murphy, who at the time was like the production supervisor and executive producer, she had seen How to Blow Up a Pipeline and really liked the score. And I think when I pitched my reel to the people of the Pitt, it was just very unconventional. Like my music isn't like fairy tale Pixar stuff. Like I like to write with found sounds. Like I studied very experimental music in my undergrad. Like one of my professors, our textbook was a field recorder. And our assignments were to just go record sounds in the world and make music out of it. Like not using any conventional instruments. Like just make sounds with doors opening and weird sounds like breathing and all that stuff. So that's really where the sound design and music kind of get blurred there. And so I have a lot of that music I had sent to the Pitt. And there was something like about they were like John and Scott and Terry, like the creators, they all were looking for something very unconventional. Like they really didn't want the classic medical drama score, which we all know and truly is very dated and a bit cheesy, like, but like in a very nostalgic, warm way that we all like when we watch stuff of a different era. It's just they wanted to take the genre into a modern approach and look for a composer who had like an unconventional idea. So then when they liked my reel, I'm sure that with many shows, they probably pick a small pool of composers, maybe 10 or less. And then they sent us the first episode to watch with no music. And then they scheduled like an interview with us, just to chat. And when I watched the show, I initially was like, I don't think there should be any score for this. Like, it's so good. And also, like, it just would make it a little bit cheesy. So when I met with them, like I met with Scott and Terry and John and like a bunch of the team, I literally was like maybe stupidly being like, I'm going to talk myself out of a job here. But I said, I don't think you guys need a score. Like, I don't know. This show is so good. It doesn't really need this like big score. And like they all were like so happy to hear that. Scott put his hands up and he was like, this guy like gets it. He felt like I understood. So my pitch was like, what if we made like a score that was like subconscious, a score that was more about like enhancing the feelings but not being like in your face and noticeable. And one idea that I pitched was, what would it sound like if the medical equipment was making the score? What would it sound like if the machines were pulsing in different rhythms? And like if the electronics of the hospital were the score, where it's like room sounds, like very subtle drones, like these like low end sub pulses that feel like heartbeats kind of like escalating, so that it's not like a score that everybody's like, it's not in your forefront. But if somebody muted the music, you'd be like, oh, it feels a little empty. But truthfully, as you've probably realized, and like there's been that great Pitchfork article and lots of articles that are like, oh, there's no music in the pit, or there's no score. And like, to basically, that means I kind of feel like I am doing like my job, in the sense of like people aren't really noticing it, but there is more music than most people realize. So it's been kind of fun in that regard to kind of play between the lines there, you know? And so it's been interesting trying to find the balance between how much music, how subconscious should it be, what kind of sounds that are subconscious, all of that. So I know it's a long-winded answer.
I think that it's really, everything we've heard from everybody we've interviewed is about how collaborative this process is compared to a lot of the positions that they've worked in and other shows. So I imagine that really felt like that they had found the right person when you were basically describing how you wanted to put yourself in. I imagine that's unusual to have someone who is an artist, because I used to do theater. I think we can all be, when we're in the arts, a little bit flamboyant, and normally we want to stand out and be in the forefront. So I think that they probably really knew that they had found their guy when you were describing how you wanted to basically make yourself disappear.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the ultimate like goal is to do the best thing for the project. And it's so funny because like
Not everyone has the ego to do that, though, or the lack of ego.
yeah, and thank you. I mean, I feel like even some of my favorite composers like have similar stories. It's not really about us, it's like about the entity as a whole. And I think it is funny. So it's like How to Blow Up a Pipeline, the score is legitimately like a Chris Nolan movie. It is so bombastically loud and like even like cuts off dialogue. So I couldn't have had like a more opposite score. But like that was the thing, was like that was that director's style. And so it's like people from the pit had seen How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and the score is like literally at level 10 the entire movie, just blasting and like washing out sounds like literally the Chris Nolan movie. And then like the pit's the complete opposite. And like the funny thing is, like this year I have 2 new movies coming out which both have a similar How to Blow Up a Pipeline vibe. Like this movie I'm working on called Faces of Death is going to come out April 10th, and that score is legitimately like at a 10 the entire time. So bombastic, so high energy, literally the opposite. And then another movie I have playing at South by, literally the exact same thing, like free jazz, like crazy experimental. So to your point, I think it helps that I get to work on such a vast styles. Like I'm working on stuff that's synthy and electronic and 80s, and then I have a score that's free jazz with weird drums, and then the pit is more about subtle machine sounds that are pulsing and electronic drones. So I feel like it's just about, like, I feel fortunate for different levels of things, but again, like it is always like, what's the best thing for this project? This isn't like a big feature. This isn't like about like, oh, how can I get my music heard, in a sense. Like, I've been lucky that I have projects like that, but ultimately it's like, if you do approach anything with that mentality, I think you're ultimately hurting the quality of your music and you're hurting the film. And so for the pit, once they had like decided on a few of us composers and had an interview with us, right? Then they sent us a few scenes to score. They're like, let's hear your pitch demonstrated. Like, it's great to hear you talk and all, but like, let's hear what it actually sounds like in practice. So I sent them like 3 different alternative ideas. Like for the scene that I remember pitching to was episode 1, season 1, the very end when Robbie's chasing the teenager out of the hospital, and then like he comes back into the waiting room and he kind of has his first anxiety attack, and then it flashes back to the COVID moment, and then the episode ends. So that was like the scene, the whole thing. And so I wrote 3 versions that varied in musicality of noticeability. Like I did do a version that was like, this is a more musical, like forefront version to show you that that's still something that I can do. But then I wrote 2 extremely subtle versions that may have felt very sound designed, and I didn't want them to like I didn't know, like everybody's definition of like what's a subtle score sound like, what's a sound design score, that is a very vague term. And as you've probably realized talking to Brian, sound and music are abstract. It's not like when you like talk to a cinematographer or a gaffer about lighting and images, something that we can clearly see with our eyes and talk in a very like precise way. Sound and music is subjective and abstract, and
it's difficult to know what they're going to want.
Exactly. So I wrote 3 different versions, and then the funniest thing is like I did hear some of the other demos. They may have like had us upload in the Dropbox, and it may have been like public for a minute. And I saw some of the other composers' tracks, and they were excellent, but they just were too big. And it seemed like that is something that's like, yeah, like those are amazing compositions, but like for this particular show, the style that the show just needed a much more like delicate, subtle approach. And so I think it is a lot to do with removing yourself and like not thinking about like what this will do for me or how people will think about me when
you're not trying to create a Gavin Brivik sound. You're trying to
just be the Pitt.
I want to say one more thing, Becky, and I'll let you move on, but I really want to make sure that I tell you this because it really touches me what you've done with the sound. And I've had a couple of losses in the last couple of years. So I've spent a bit of time in hospitals. And one of the things that I think that you have created, you were talking earlier about how other shows, it's kind of a dated thing. They use the music to tell you how to feel very obviously in almost every scene. And that draws some of the realism away from it. But what you do actually helps. I can't explain it the way that I want to. You help people to feel exactly the way that it feels in a hospital. The feeling isn't this overwhelming. It's not always this big Sturm and Drang. Some it's this drag, and then it's this anxiety, and then it's this numbness. And your score encapsulates all of that. It genuinely makes you feel the way that you do when you are in these situations in a real hospital.
Yep, I agree.
That's very kind of you to say, Mandy, but I really don't feel like I could take any credit for that in the sense of like that truly is like the vision of Scott and Noah and John and Terry.
I think the sound really helps with though.
The sound does, but I'm not actually even scoring those moments. Like that's something maybe Brian is
really?
Like truly credited. Like this is the main thing I actually credit them for is they were like, let's not ever put music for a sad moment. Like anytime a doctor consoles a patient, anytime like somebody loses somebody, we never use music. And like all you're hearing is that like deathly silence or the ambience of a hospital, which I really think that's like Brian right there. And also just the creative direction of Scott and them, because the HBO and Warner Brothers and like many other people I think did, like want to experiment with that. But I think that it was their bravery and creative direction that was like, let's not do that, because that is the cliched thing to do with. So I like I'm really just like not doing anything there, but I agreed with them, and I never wanted to do anything because like and like I've also been in the same experience in those horrible like hospital experiences when I've also lost people, and when a doctor is talking to you, it's just silent. Like it's uncomfortable. It's like not there's nobody like having
that's
a
part of the
piano
real pathos of it is that it's not this big cinematic thing.
Exactly. So that's like truly the bravery of them, and like, as much as I would like to say I had any part in that, that's just truly the direction I was given, and like a direction that I loved that they gave me, because it is uncomfortable. Like, if you rewatch scenes where Robbie's talking to the parents of this person, or the like this person's spouse died, like there's just like a kind of a harsh silence sometimes, or if like, especially in the waiting room or like in the consultation family rooms, like it's just silent. And there might have been a few scenes where we did actually like subtly put a drone or two. I think like a example of that is in season 1, when Robbie's like talking to his, like when there's like a few patients at the last episode of season 1, or it might have been episode 14 or 15, where they're kind of like talking about the losses of the mass shooting. We may have subtly put something, but it was like a single note. It wasn't like I'm playing like big sappy chords. Again, like, it's just their bravery to do that, because even in the sound mixes, it can feel like uncomfortable to just be quiet for that long when somebody's just like sitting there crying, but that's them.
That's the reality.
It is. So I love them for that.
And it maybe is Brian's team, and that's part of my ignorance, is not really knowing where the overlap completely is. But it's not just silent. Like, there are a lot of scenes where, for instance, I notice a lot of when they're showing Robbie having his PTSD moments, where it's almost like everything becomes muffled in a way.
It's like an eerie, well, if I can, Mandy, jump in here.
Sure.
I noticed it. Since we talked to Brian, I've been trying to pay a lot more attention to the sounds, and to where I think, because one of our questions, and you answered it eloquently without even knowing that we were going to ask it, was that you're using the machines and the monitors and whatnot as music. And in this last episode, in episode 5, at the end, when Robbie comes in and they discover that Louis is in arrest, and there's like this eerie tone. I think it's you. I believe it's you.
Okay, that stuff is me, and so that's
how did you create that?
So I initially created that sound that was a sound in season 1. So sorry, like, with this question, there was a few parts, which is, there are, like, in season 1, there was a lot more moments of exactly what you're speaking about. Every time Robbie had a flashback and things felt like muffled, that definitely had a lot more like a touch of score. That's a perfect example of when Brian and I would be very collaborative. Similarly, the moment you just mentioned, which is Brian, like, my work is a lot more like those types of tones, like things that fit into Brian's world, but without taking away from him and his team's work. So it's about finding like drones and machine sounds that are like still musical, because if I also did too many like found sound machine things, it might be actually confusing to the audience of like, what is this? Like, is that a sound? So like, a lot of my stuff was originally sourced from hospital sounds, but I processed them with musical equipment to make them like musical. So it's kind of like hard to explain, but imagine if I like recorded the pulse ox machine, or if I recorded like an MRI scan, or I got like a source of a sound like that. There's a lot of equipment I have where I can run these sounds through guitar pedals. Or what if I took a pulse ox beep and I stretched it 2000%, so that now like a little beep is like a long tone because I stretched it like infinitely. And those are always techniques I use to create sound. So it's like there was a lot of that in the beginning. So I just took like, maybe some public domain hospital recordings, or there are a lot of like, free like recordings of this type of machine. And so then I would like stretch it infinitely or pitch it really down. So it's like that high pitch beep. What does that sound like? Super low. And then you're like now hearing things that you wouldn't even know what the original source was. It might just start sounding, like you said, like a synth. And so that type of thing was pretty common. So it's funny, like some of the stuff I can't remember the original sources for, but there were a lot of the original material came from things like that, where it's like, oh, what does it sound like if I put this weird machine down like sound and I stretch it 2000%, put it really low, and then maybe run it through a synthesizer or something, and then it becomes like a kind of musical sound. And that's like a common way that I generate material.
That's so cool.
It's very effective.
It is.
Thank you.
I know it's very subtle, but it definitely helps to create the mood of a real hospital in a way that no other medical drama has ever
Yeah.
done.
And I loved ER back in the day. I am real big into medical dramas. And when we were watching season 1 and we started the podcast, we were a couple episodes in when we realized that big aha moment that this isn't filled with that emotional music that is telling you, okay, you need to feel this way. And I think that was a brave, bold, and absolutely brilliant choice, because the show itself, the writing, the directing sets it apart. But those nuances to me bring it from middle level or top level to over the top level. It's so impressive.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I again, like, I really admire like Scott and Terry and John and Noah. Like, people did kind of fight against that initial direction. Like, it is, again, like, such a bold idea that it's not something that like, they, like, it was like easy before people saw it to be unsure of this direction. Like, is this going to be hard for people to watch, or like, is this too stark? But I mean, like, obviously now nobody's thinking that, and it's such a brilliant choice. But I do feel like initially, like, there was a little bit of a concern about it. But that being said, like, I and you've already interviewed Brian, like, I truly praise Brian and like Formosa and like the sound group at every moment, because like their job is probably like the least praised in some ways, which is like, it's just accepted how good it is, where like I'm there in this, like, I'm sure like you spoke with them, but it's like I'm there in the sound room where he's getting the exact type of sound that this exact type of machine makes, and like he's getting reference videos of like, oh, this is how it sounds when this person has this exact type of symptom, and Brian's like having to recreate it to like an extreme accuracy that is like totally taken for granted. But I really never want to impose on his work, so it's always like about the subtlety. Like, the subtlety was such a nice direction for me to also allow Brian's work to speak and to come through so clearly, because I really like thinking of some of my last projects where I've been like the bombastic loud music that like the sound designer spent weeks on the scene, and then now we're in the sound mix and the music's just like blasting it away. So like that, but like vice versa, I've had the exact experience where I spent months on a track of music, and then we go to mix it, and then they like realize like, oh, we actually kind of want it to be soft here and the sound to be really loud. So that's just a reality of the collaboration. But it feels nice in this one that like the vision is so clear that we know where all of our work kind of fits into the mix,
Yeah, it was really interesting.
It really is.
Listening to Brian talk about how meticulous he is about his process, and hearing how meticulous you are about yours, it's
And you both are very complimentary of each other too. It was
really?
much
That's
where
good.
you're talking about how good he and his team are. He said the same about you and what you do. So it's cool that you guys don't really get to work side by side, but respect and appreciate each other's viewpoint and where you're going as artists. It's chef's kiss to you guys.
Thank you. One last thing on this, just before we move on, it's like, this is also very specific to the way composers and sound designers collab on the Pit. Brian and I both do indie films and, like cool horror stuff. Had we work on another thing, it would actually be very different. And I think we would be working side by side, and there would be a lot more. So it's like, this is also just so specific to the Pit. Like, all of this conversation, like, this isn't like a template for the way composers and sound designers usually work. Like, this is just how the Pit works. And like, Brian and I would have a slightly different process in another setting with another group of people. And that's kind of the fun of the job, is there's no like standardized way that this ever happens.
Did that work out amongst you guys? I mean, was that something you kind of developed with yourselves, or was that direction from the showrunners?
Definitely direction. Like that's the greatest thing about the show is like the showrunners, the creators, like this is just like the veterans, like the legends. Like they're all just like the gods. It's like I'm a child, you know. It's like I'm 34 and like the youngest one on the team by far, and I'm just here to learn and be quiet and like pick up as much information because I'm learning from people who know this, who've done this, who understand this on a level that I could not understand with my experience. So their direction is everything. Like it feels like we're just being perfectly directed at all times. So like that's why it's like, you know, I feel grateful for your praise, but I really just can't help but keep reflecting to Scott and Terry and John and Noah. Like they're the ones that just know everything and they got it down. They like see the episode. They like know what it needs to be. And I'm just like helping their vision because I also agree and believe in it and feel protected that such good people are running it. So it's like a very unique project. Like nothing I've worked on has ever been like this or probably will ever be like this again. It's just a unique project for all of us involved because of that level of confidence at the top, you know?
That's very
Yes.
exciting for you. And I like you look like a baby. So
I know.
I'm surprised that you're 36, but it also surprises me that at 36 they still have
34.
hardcore.
I was going to say, you've aged him 2 years.
Pardon me. It happens fast.
It will.
I'm just really surprised. I was thinking you're 16 years younger than me. That's where I was getting confused. But I'm surprised that they still have kids in hardcore bands when you were in high school. I thought hardcore is dead. I thought it had passed.
No, I feel like I was there for peak. I was in peak hardcore time because I was in high school in 2006. We were like right there in like Warp Tour days, you know? But that being said, I guess there's always been like really hardcore stuff, but I do feel very grateful and like I really love the trust and I've often thought like maybe my age and taste and preferences is kind of what they were looking for, which was something new and unconventional and like the next gen of music scores, which like we're really seeing across the board from composers of all ages. Like I just think that we're craving more unconventional work. You know, like this year with like Marty Supreme, Begonia, like, you know, all these types of movies, one battle after another, like scores are like breaking the bounds of things that we used to believe were very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think audiences are loving the new ideas that are like I think pop music's expressing this as well, like with artists kind of Arca and FKA Twigs and all these kind of like pop artists who are doing stuff that's outside the bounds of what we used to think music was or could be. So I think it's just a globalization of music becoming more experimental, and I think that TV and film are obviously mirroring that with like their scores and soundtracks that we all love. So I feel like that was totally the trend and the ideas that they were looking for, and it worked in my favor to maybe be more in tune with the newer ideas and sounds that are kind of happening in the community, you know?
Yeah.
We got 2 more questions.
Great.
If we can squeeze them in. You want to go ahead and do question 5?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the season 1 end credits song "Fall Forward" was quite different from the regular ambient score. It's a beautiful song, and it really added to the story of our characters. Can you tell us about how that song came to be, and did you expect it to speak to the audience as much as it has?
Yeah, so like it's funny. I initially thought we were gonna do a score for like a more ambient score for the end credits of season 1. So we had a version of that. Like, you know, we tried actually a few things before we decided on Fail Forward, and so it just wasn't like totally hitting. And then the first episode of season 1, they use a song from The Smile, like the Radiohead guys' new band. And that song just goes hard. It just kind of gives the show like an unexpected ending. So after hearing the Smiles song, you know, I really didn't. We kind of got inspired by that and the tone of like maybe making the end credits more song based. And so John had asked me if I knew if I had like any pre-existing songs or if I like wanted to write a song. And Taji, who was like, you know, the original singer and writer of Fail Forward, like he was a good buddy of mine and we used to play in a band together. We were just friends. And I called him and I was like, Taj, you have any like sketches, things that might vibe? And he kind of sent me like an acoustic guitar version of Fail Forward. And then I was like, what if we like kind of rework this and make this like a real song? And so we kind of just collaborated and made a version that, and Scott gave us some notes. Like we got some feedback, like what if the drum beat was a little faster? Like what if the song had more energy? And so it was like fun to kind of rework this song to kind of become this season 1 like Pitt song. And we didn't expect them to use it every episode. If anything, that became like this kind of surprise thing where Scott's like, I just love it. Like there isn't a theme song, so let's try putting it for every episode. But they definitely, like, you know, there's a few other songs throughout the season. So yeah, that was totally a fun collaboration with a friend that kind of went beyond our expectations. And I like the kind of contrast sometimes it does have to the episode's endings. You know, it's not exactly what you expect after some of those endings. And so with that, I'm sure like for season 2, it was like fun to kind of come up with new ideas. And for this season, you know, we've been doing different songs. Like it's not just one song every time, which I really love, honestly, because I like to keep variety, you know? And like I love that we're not just like kind of doing the same thing again. Like I love that we're not using Fail Forward in season 2. Like I love that this season's a new song, new characters, new time period. Like I like the challenge of trying to find like a new song that people will resonate with, you know?
Yeah, that actually, it's almost like the song lived out its life cycle in that season, that first season, and which kind of gets to the follow-up, which is there were no lyrics in the song until the last episode. So you're telling us that you didn't realize even that they were going to be in all 15 episodes.
No, definitely not.
So you didn't know that the lyric version wasn't going to come until the very end?
Well, the lyrics had always been there, and actually what we had done is we had muted them. Like, so we had actually like had them there the whole time. So it was like a fully fleshed out song, but we found that the instrumental just kind of was the move. It was like more, it was closer to a score. It was a song, but I mean, it was more instrumental. So it felt more aligned with like allowing the audience to not like, again, like not be told what to think, which lyrics have that vibe. I think like I had always wanted the lyrics to be used at least once. So Scott just kind of saved the moment. You know, he was like, let's wait for a very impactful episode and then we'll use it for that. And I think it was like a brilliant idea because I was like almost open to using the lyrics much earlier or more often, but I love that we like kind of waited, and I think it had like a nice effect. And it's interesting because like I did kind of get audience feedback. Some people weren't crazy about the lyrics.
Oh,
But like it doesn't matter. Like I don't care. And also like the only reason I think that, which I could kind of agree with them, is that they had created this meaning from the song. They had been they watched 14 episodes with no lyrics, or 13 or whatever, and they had like imagined the episode, and then like all of a sudden the lyrics come in, and like with anything music, lyrics and vocal types, they're all subjective, and that's I can equally say more people.
But that's why I liked it.
No, exactly. Like a lot of people.
it was Robbie when the lyrics came, and we, you know, it was a big deal all over the internet. And it's like, you know, you listen to the song and you're like, good God, that was Robbie's journey this entire season.
It's amazing. And like, it truly was like a beautiful thing. And I agree with you. Like most people love it. And I love that we have like, you know, that's why we released the instrumental and the vocal version, is to give people like the versions that they most resonated with. But yeah, like I'm so grateful that we waited for it, and especially waited for like a big moment in the show. And it's hard because it's like, kind of didn't want to read too much of like the internet's responses to everything, but I get a lot of love, and I know Taji gets so much love from it. And it's fun because like we both, you know, feel proud to just have played a part in that. And it's you know, this episode, this is totally just kind of a side note, it's coming out next week, right? Well, like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like I have a really big song coming in this Thursday one. Cool. A really big song with a really big artist. So like, I don't know if you want to talk about that, because this would come out post it. It's unfortunately, I don't want to spoil the episode, but that being said, this next episode has a really big collab, and I feel like it would be a little bit of a shame if we don't at least talk about it, because if this episode's going to come out after, it would make the most sense, you know?
Yeah.
Do it.
So for this season, there's an artist named Andrew Bird. He's an amazing folk singer. unbelievable artist, and he's given like TED Talks, and he's got a big following. And his wife, he has been through a very personal journey himself with the medical system, and I wouldn't really want to speak for him, but I know that the show has very much personally connected with him. And honestly, I've been a fan of his music for like over 10 years. Like, he is truly a remarkable person. So like, we got to collaborate on a song this season, and it uses like, it's kind of its own standalone song. And so I feel very honored that this season there's like a really beautiful song with very meaningful lyrics for a very special moment. And I'm very curious to see how the fans will respond after this episode, which I'm sure by the time this comes out, we will definitely know. I feel honored that we've also savored lyrics for a very specific moment, and the rest is instrumental. And I think that that trend and that careful precision is exactly what the show's been like, just from the top. Like, Scott knows what's going on and understands what to do, and I like the carefulness of the choices so far. Yeah.
So
I'm really excited about that, but I also love that you're not precious about the fact that some people were not happy once they got the lyrics, because I think it's kind of like when somebody does like an interpretation of your favorite novel and you see who they cast, or like they're doing Wuthering Heights now, and I
know.
It's my favorite novel, and I can't go see it because I've seen the cellophane dress that they've chosen, and it's for someone, but it's probably not for me. So I love that you've got that attitude about it, that like you put it out there, and the way that people interpret it is their own thing.
It's out of your control, and it's not personal. Like, I literally could talk to somebody and be like, my favorite artist who I think is the best musician ever, and then they could be like, I think that person sucks. Like, I hate that.
Yeah.
And nobody's really wrong. Like, it's just,
yeah, it's just art subjective.
and like, literally, like, that's why you just can't really care that much about stuff like that. If you are affected from that stuff, I just don't think film and TV is like the right industry for you, because it's like, so many famous artists have tried film scoring and then get like notes, and they're like, well, what the fuck? So many famous stories of like really big celeb artists trying to score a film who either quit or they ended up bringing somebody in to remove themselves, but like they kept in, like, they had ghostwriters because it was so frustrating to watch their stuff like get butchered or whatever, that they just had to remove themselves. Like, that's like the most common story, where there's endless things like that. And I think I've never felt that pressure. I feel like there's certain projects that I really get very precious about, and I'll always fight the right fights. But when I lose, I just have to move on. And also, like, certain things I go into knowing that this is kind of like, we might have a little differing tastes, or this is just the style of the project. But that's just each collab and the relationships I have with the director or the showrunner. And thankfully on the Pitt, nothing has ever like come up where I disagreed. Like, I feel that's why it's like the most unique and rare job.
Every single person we've spoken to, like you all just have this feeling of feeling safe with the choices that the people, the leadership.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that you're appreciated. You are there because you are the very best person for that position.
So, last question. So, you've got that song that I have stalked your Spotify, 4th of July.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if that is the song for season 2.
It's
is
one
that
of them.
What we're hearing at the end credits?
So we actually have 2 versions. It's like there's 2 songs on that Pitt release for season 2. There's 4th of July and then We Are Back. And we are alternating between those 2 songs per episode. And the alternations also include variations. Like, we might not use drums and add strings to a version, or this or that. And then the interesting part is the collaboration I have with Andrew Bird is inspired by the track. So there's like inspirations where we try to create unity, but it's different, obviously, and different melodic stuff. But we like use inspired things. We hired the same musicians. But I would say, like, yeah, 4th of July and We Are Back are like the 2 songs from season 2. And people seem to really love 4th of July versus We Are Back, which I love 4th of July the most too, funny enough. I love them both, and everybody has their thing, but it's, again, like a really interesting thing to see, like, streaming numbers and maybe people texting or messaging me on Instagram being like, oh, I love this song. and it seems to be like 4th of July is the one that people are really digging versus We Are Back. But like both of them are like kind of the songs this season. We did want to create more variety. I even wrote other ones that we didn't use. Like again, like we started alternating these two, and I was open to doing a new one for every episode. I was like, let's go that far. I'm okay with it. Like I want to do that. But I think there is a thing about reusing the same track which creates closer to a theme for that season versus like feeling different every episode. So I kind of love the repetition of some of these melodies that become like, oh, this is the melody I remember listening to after this moment of the show, and it has this kind of connotation because of how I was feeling when I heard it.
It helps you build that continuity without that really obvious score in the background.
Exactly.
And do we get the lyrics for 4th of July and We're Back by the end of the season, or are you going to stick with that same format?
That's a good question. Well, yeah, like those songs are staying instrumental this season, and I like the choice of that, we're really like leaning into the score aspect of it, because again, like as much as some of the fans really like the vocals of Fail Forward, it does seem like even like maybe the instrumental's still the one that like it felt a little closer to a score, and maybe it was just the concept of like, let's have score for end credits this season versus like doing too many songs, because they really also didn't license like a ton of like the pit could like probably put a big song in every episode if they really wanted to. Like they do that for always like the first and last episodes. Like we always get like a great song. Like the first season has Robbie walking into work. This season had Robbie on his bicycle. Like we still put in those like iconic big song moments, but like they're spare. It's like maybe the first and last episode. It's like a bookend type thing. Like if the pit wanted to, they could do that every episode easily, but I'm glad that they don't.
I'm glad they don't.
And I'm also glad that they don't want to have like lyrical songs at every episode. And like I think it plays into kind of the same thing I was talking about, which is it gives the audience a second to like maybe take in what they had just seen. If if they're watching the credits, I always forget if HBO like zooms out, but even if they just listen to the first 10 seconds or whatever, it's like it just allows you to kind of just breathe for a second and like listen to a melody that allows you to think and doesn't like kind of telegraph any sort of message.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's still a few episodes where in every season where there's some lyrics, and I think the variety is very carefully chosen for careful moments,
It's very judicious.
Exactly.
What you were describing is it's like at the end it lets you just kind of sonically decompress for a few minutes, for a few seconds.
Exactly.
That was very well put.
Yeah, and this show is one of our favorite things to talk about is guessing. This show will keep you guessing because you don't know what's going to happen next, and adding the music to that just plays right along with.
Yeah, it's all just part of the same thing.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited for you all to hear like the other variations and surprises that come along the way throughout the season. And I just feel very, again, like having seen most of the season, I just couldn't be like in better hands, and so is the audience. And like I also like just love the new characters and love the character arcs, and the writing staff is so thoughtful and empathetic and smart, and they also do unexpected things, like as you know from season 1. It's like you're like, oh, like they'll save this person, that's like the Hollywood thing to do, and then like unfortunately like they don't, and we all know like that's the harshest reality of the world, but an important reality to express, to give the hospital care workers and staff the most authentic character arcs themselves, because this is their reality. If they were like saving every kid and every good person that you love that came through there, it would be a much different kind of show that would feel truly like it wouldn't portray their experiences authentically, but would like maybe be playing audience fan service, which I really appreciate that this is more about the harshness of the hospital care team rather than kind of like being too like Hollywood-y.
Selling this idea of doctors as superheroes.
Exactly, which like they definitely have their moments, and we see that, and they do play that, but it's not every time.
But they're very human. as
very
Yes.
well.
human, and like it's just also some cases are beyond like their saving abilities, and it's important to portray that to understand how their mental health is affected, because
Right.
to just imagine like spending a day there, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I have a stressful day, and then I like think, I'm like, God, like compared to when I'm like working on the pit, I'm like, God, my life is so lush and silly and like comfortable, and I get a lot of sleep, and it's like, yeah, like I don't have anything to ever complain about. When you do kind of like put yourself in another person's shoes, I feel like a lot of people have had that same realization and gratitude, and for me, like having had a grandfather who was like, you know, a pediatric doctor, and then like having a close friend now whose cousin is like a liver specialist and is doing liver transplants every day. It's like you just start like thinking about these people's day-to-day lives, and I'm like, oh, I'll see my friend's cousin at a party and we're all like having a drink and hanging out, and I'm like, you just like 2 hours ago were cutting somebody open and putting a different organ in there, and I was like playing some synthesizer and plugging in a patch, and I'm like, I don't have anything to ever like the levels of like gravity and mental capabilities is like it's always been there. It's so obvious, but like I think for a lot of people the pit's like just grounded it so intensely in like a post-COVID world, in
Yeah.
like the current political environment where we're like dealing with anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists and like defunding and like this and that, and like
Anti-science propaganda everywhere.
yeah, so it's like it couldn't just be a more like important time
Hmm.
to for the show. So it feels like especially poignant to be grounded, and that's all to come back to say like the music is allowing us to just be in the moment and be present, rather than being like this is a fairy tale or this is
Yeah.
some sort of version of this that we wish that is easier to digest, you know?
Yeah, I have a good friend who's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and she won't watch the show because, like most
Yes,
really,
I
really
know.
smart people, she's a little bit on the spectrum, and I think it messes with her to see all the
Trust
things
me.
that are too dramatic. But I keep trying to explain to her that it's a television show. They have to sell the television show to people
Of
to get on the
course, of
air,
course.
but they're doing the Lord's work, getting out the message of how, because we had the same experience you did, really understanding, my God, these people have PTSD constantly all day long. You're losing people all of the time. You are dealing with just unimaginable pressures. You're literally putting your life in danger.
No, I
Like last
mean,
season when Dana
seriously.
got punched in the face, that is
Exactly.
so real. And living in the South, trust me, oh man, it's a million times worse here
I
with
can't even
the
imagine. I
science
can't.
denial. And yeah, and so they are really truly doing, in addition to making great television, they're doing really important work right now.
Yep.
Oh, I couldn't agree. I think the biggest Hollywood part of the pit is just that everybody's hot. Like that is the
Yeah.
most good. Like everybody in that staff is just hot. And when I went to the premiere, I was like floored by seeing them not in their scrubs. I was like, these are the most attractive people. That being said, I have a friend in Kansas City, and this was not in LA. So that's an important distinction, is like they were in like a Midwest hospital, and they took like a little video being like, this is the hottest hospital I've ever seen, with like every nurse and doctor was super hot. So I'm like, maybe there is some truth that maybe attractive people get. But that being said, that's my only thing when I talk to people. I'm like, you're right. There's a little bit of dramatization. I've watched TikToks with nurses, and I see the very like hyper fixated critiques of things that I totally agree with. And yeah, of course, there's those. But then, like, of course, that's just also like a casting thing of like, that's maybe the most Hollywood moment. But I love like that. Those are all like small things that's like, yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of a TV show flair. Like, this is a TV show, but relatively speaking, it is like beyond grounded and beyond accurate. And have you all spoken to Joe Sachs yet, or any of the
No,
doctors? You
I've
know
been
who
reaching out.
I'll speak to him on Thursday. I'll see him, and
Oh, that
I'll
would be
ask if
great.
he. But Joe is a good he might be like a person, truthfully, you might only be able to get like 30 minutes with because of like
We'll
how
take
insane
it.
he is.
We'll take
But
it.
that being said, like Joe's a perfect person where he's like in the sound room, and he's done every surgery that we're seeing, and he
He's
knows
lived
exactly. He lived it, and he also, like, you know, he wrote for ER. Like, he's done like the Hollywood life, and he's done like the extremely insane being, like, he's been Dr. Robbie and like a huge ER. So it's like he knows all that, and he's giving like sound advice. He's giving like special effects notes, like, oh, the blood wouldn't look like that, or that's not the right sound, or they mispronounced that kind of medication, and like we need to re-record it so it's accurate. So like the level of detail that he catches just in my part, like, I know there's so many other consulting doctors on the actual production side, but like in post-production, I'm mostly just seeing Dr. Joe like give the notes. So it's like really cool to see the detail and the care and like the accuracy and the willingness to like redo something. Like, it's obviously like easy, like nobody's gonna notice that that blood boiled in a little bit of a wrong way when they pulled out this tube, but like Joe does.
It matters.
Yeah, like, I mean, no other show has gone that far, so it's like we can excuse that everybody there is gorgeous. Let's just like we can. There's some like suspension of disbelief in anything that's on TV, but
Exactly.
like relatively speaking, like it is unbelievable to see their work and to see how much everybody cares. And like you've seen from the people you've interviewed, like we all just feel eternally grateful, and we love the fans and people that like we love, like you all, and everybody who cares about the show and everybody who's trying to bring awareness to like that community, you know?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Is it okay to put your Instagram page and stuff like that in show notes?
Of course.
And seriously, if you want to send us anything to use for the start of our podcast,
Really? I would love to.
to say we have Gavin Brivik original audio would rock everybody's world.
Oh, I would do it in a heartbeat. I'll send you some options. I don't know, like maybe if you have any references that could be helpful. You're like, oh, I love this podcast, or if I know it could be hard because I have a daunting amount of things with various tones of like, this is very upbeat, this is kind of weird, this is ambient. Like it might just, if you have like a few minutes, maybe you both could like gather one or two like other podcasts or anything that would give me just a little bit of a reference point of like the style or tone. That would be super helpful, but I could easily send stuff.
Send you what we're currently using, because I tend to switch it up for each show we're covering. If it's something creepy,
cool.
I go creepy. If it's the pit, it's kind of like, I'll send you what I've got.
Sounds great.
That wraps up our interview with the amazingly talented Gavin Brivik. Next up, we're going to continue our coverage of season 2 of The Pit.
Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
And I'm Gavin.
We'll catch you next week when we grab the remote and see what's on tonight. Bye.
Bye.